most addicts have learned they have negative core beliefs underneath all this that say, I'm bad, I'm defective, I'm a fraud, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, and all this stuff. I feel a lot of shame over my behaviors. And if people really knew this stuff about me, there's no way they would stay. Actually, it's the opposite. If you share all this stuff, not only is it going to help heal you, your relationship will heal and restore if you share all the dirty secrets that you've had. There's some freedom to that. The relationship's forged through the fire. They become stronger through this whole thing. We're only as sick as our secrets. This is maybe the first time in my whole life that I have no secrets from the person that I care about the most.
Hey, everybody. Hunter Nicole Otis here. Grateful to have you here with us for those of you that are here live. But today we actually have our friend Dan Drake here with us. He is a disclosure expert. He's also a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist. He's got a long list of certifications. He's a busy guy. But Dan was actually one of our supervisors back in the day, and has been a good friend over these years. And is just someone that we really trust and respect, and has a ton of experience. And so if there's anyone that can help guide you successfully through a disclosure process, it'd be Dan or someone that Dan has trained. And so anyway, Dan, why don't you just tell us just a little bit about yourself? Keep it simple. It's fine. But then if you can also explain to us just generally how you got into doing this whole disclosure thing, I think it'd be great for people to know a little bit.
Yeah, no, thanks. And it's so great to join you guys. I'm so honored to be there with you guys. So just a bit about me. I'm the founder and clinical director of Banyan Therapy Group. We're based in Los Angeles. And if you can see, I'm not in Los Angeles right now. My family were out actually kind of back and forth between Boise, Idaho and Los Angeles. So just that's my background. Father of two kids and two fur babies. And we're out here enjoying some snow. But yeah, in terms of the disclosure side, it's really interesting. I will say I never, ever set out to gain and kind of build an expertise in doing the disclosure process. This started actually as a random side project. I was working with a colleague on another project, and we were doing a chapter on a book based on disclosure, and we kind of put our resources together, and we thought, oh, we could put a little workbook together for disclosure. We thought that might be helpful for couples. And that turned into probably a 4-year plus project. And it turned into a series of books because we realized what we wanted to do was help couples navigate the full disclosure process in a way that was going to help support them and help them, heal well, because this can go pretty poorly if it's not well coordinated and executed. So that's something we did, and we realized there's a lot of different components to it. And then anyway, that turned into a series of resources, and we've been also training professionals to basically help us do this well so that couples can navigate the process and heal in the best way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to second what you said. It's so important to do this process properly. I know a lot of people have a ton of anxiety around how in the world do I tell my partner? Should I tell my partner? Which is all the kind of things we're going to talk about today. But, we've seen it. We've seen it where people do that. What is it? What is when it's a delayed disclosure or staggered disclosure? There's the word. Sorry. Staggered disclosure, where it's just like rewounding the partner. But I think a lot of people just aren't armed with the tools and know how to handle it. And so I'm excited to dig into this today.
Well, I think a first question to start off with is, what is a disclosure? Because when I had a questionnaire that I would ask my betrayed partners, I would say, have you gone through a formal disclosure? And when they would answer that question, they didn't understand what a formal disclosure was. They would just say how their partner told them. Right. And so it might be even helpful for some people who don't even know what is a disclosure. So I don't know if that's too elementary.
No, well, the short of it is I can tell you what it isn't, and then we can talk about what it is. I mean, it essentially what it is the unveiling of truth. It's the sharing of the full truth from the betraying person to the betrayed. And that there's a lot of different ways that can go down, but that's the short of it, is the person being willing to be fully honest and transparent about the sexual actions that they did that betrayed their partner. So all the stuff that's been hidden in secret is basically sharing that with the partner. It is not, it's not something that's done, basically it's done with support and guidance. It's not I really don't recommend it being done in the living room or, at 2 a.m. when the partner can't sleep and they understandably have so many questions that they want answered, and they'll fire off questions at 2 a.m. and then, the person betraying person shares and some information. It could be partial truths or minimizations of stuff or overshares. Sometimes it's not oversharing. It's not undersharing. It's the whole truth to the level that the partner wants the detail. So there's a lot of choreography that goes back and forth with this, from the betrayed partner support person to the betraying. Like I recommend 2 support people, actually guides that are guiding the both people in the coupleship, because I want to know exactly, like, if I'm preparing the betraying person, I also want to know what level of detail does the partner want to know? What do they want to know, the person's whole history or just since the relationship? What level of depth are we going into? What specific questions does the betrayed partner have? There's a lot of different components. Are we doing a polygraph, which is a whole other hot button topic? There's just a lot of choreography that goes back and forth. And that's why actually our workbooks, we wrote some workbooks. That's why they became so big. Not because we were saying this is the way to do disclosure. What we wanted to do was say, every couple's different and there's a lot of choice points for each couple to make. We wanted to help facilitate those choice points to say, here's one issue that's going to come up for you. Are we doing a written disclosure or a verbal disclosure? There's different ways this can go. And we're advocating for a certain way, I think, is best in terms of writing a disclosure, because there's a lot more depth that goes into it if you actually write a disclosure document. But there's a lot of choices that go into what's in that document.
Yeah. I think it's really important that this whole process is guided. When I have worked with betrayed partners in the past, and they want to know everything, and they have all these questions, and I have worked with them to help them to really sift out what are the most things that, like, what do you really need to know? Because some things can actually, if you know this certain thing, you can't get it out of your head, and it can create more PTSD like symptoms. So I've just heard this phrase recently that I really like, is responsible honesty.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I really liked that term because, it's important for truth and honesty to happen for a relationship to be rebuilt. But I also think there's a responsibility in that, and how you do it and what you say, because if you go into gory details that are unnecessary, it may kind of interrupt the healing process or slow it down, or
and that's such a good point. And that's where having a really knowledgeable guide on the betrayed partner side, because let's say the partner wants to know very, very specific gory details. Oftentimes what they're really wanting to know isn't those specifics. There's usually another question underneath that question, and it's probably a question of the heart that's not going to be answered through those specifics. So knowing, and I won't give specific details, but let's just say, about ethnicity or body type of another person, or these whatever specifics, is that the really relevant information that the betrayed partner wants to know? Or is what they're really trying to say, what was it about me that was there something about me that you caused you to look at somebody else or stray to something else? Or do you really love me? Which, or are you committed to a relationship? Or how could you love me and hurt me like this? If there's some of those deeper questions, they're not going to be answered by specific nuances. So that's where having support can get to. Well, maybe that's not what you're really looking for with this question. Maybe what you're really hungering for is this, which we can answer potentially later. And it's more of a heart, because disclosure is really trying to get a new foundation of honesty and truth back in the relationship, which is usually the facts. We want to just get the facts and get clear on what happened, what didn't happen. Because what I usually see for the betrayed partner, let me think of it like it would be like moving. You buy a house, sight unseen, no inspection, no appraisal, and then you're hoping for the best moving forward with this house. You don't know what the potential pitfalls might be, the problems. And I feel like moving forward in a relationship after discovery with not a formal disclosure, we don't know, is there asbestos in the house? Are the pipes about to burst? We don't know the infrastructure. We can see this thing, but we don't know what's underneath it. And I think what the disclosure does is it gives us a full foundation. Here's what we have. This is what happened. And this is where we can build from, because otherwise I just see so many betrayed partners feel like they're free falling with not having the facts. They don't know who, the addict might say, that's not me. I didn't do those things, but here's who I am. But the partner's still trying to figure out who were you? I thought you were this person, but
Right.
what you said you were doing and who I thought you were is not who you turned out to be. So they're reeling to try and figure out who this person was. And I think the disclosure helps to kind of say, this is who you were, this is what you were doing. And that time, for the partner too, to match their own intuition when, I was going through this really tough time and I just didn't understand why you were so distant from me, or you were such a jerk. I didn't realize, it's actually because you were acting out during that time. And that there's some lining up with, it was really confusing and I didn't understand, but now it actually makes sense. That's what was happening. My gut said something was wrong. I didn't know what it was. Now I know what it is.
So what you're talking about is like rebuilding trust as well. So like, would you say disclosure is like a huge springboard for rebuilding trust?
Yeah. I mean, it's a starting point. It's like, I think of it like a foundation. I think I'm just talking houses for some reason. But
yeah, that's a great metaphor.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is, if we're rebuilding, you want to make sure that foundation is secure.
Right.
And that, to me, that's the disclosure gets us to hopefully a secure foundation. I will say for anyone listening, especially this is the betray partner understands this, but if you're listening as an addict or betrayer, understand disclosure is a foundation. It's not the completed house. We got to rebuild that house. But some people think, okay, I did this, which is a big deal. But they think if I do this, then I'm done and we're good. We can kind of go back to the way things were.
Yes.
That I have to say that because you'll be sorely hurt, angry, disappointed, discouraged because, think of it like it's difficult. You're sharing this information. It's really important, but to build that foundation is going to be painful, but it's also, it's hard to move forward without that. So I think that's an important springboard to helping rebuild trust.
The metaphor that I have used with couples is that it's like a tsunami, and the tsunami comes and it like wipes out the city, and you and the partner are looking down on this wiped out city, and you're going to have to grieve, and there's going to be a lot of grief and a lot of pain, and to rebuild it, you're going to have to get the rubble out and then rebuild.
Right.
And if the couple is going to make it, they'll have to grieve together and then rebuild together, but you're not going to get back what you had before.
Right.
You're going to have to rebuild. You're going to have to transform and rebuild back something. And hopefully it's going to be something better, which usually a crisis can transform us into something better. And that's the hope. I know a lot of the betrayer is really scared to do disclosures. Like there's, and they're scared to do that process. But can you talk a little bit about maybe like the timeline, like how long does it usually take when somebody's working with you to write that up? Or I'm sure it's different for every client, but
it's totally different.
Average? Yeah.
Just two things, actually. I want to acknowledge what you just said. I think that's really important because most addicts have learned, they have negative core beliefs underneath all this that say, I'm bad, I'm defective, I'm a fraud, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, some version of that. There's a part of it. And all this stuff, I feel a lot of shame over my behaviors. And if people really knew this stuff about me, there's no way they would stay. So I understand that's usually a lot of times underneath, there's a secrecy that addicts have because I don't want you to get to know all that stuff because I'm so terrified if you do know all that, there's no way you'd want to stay with me. Yeah. So they keep this stuff hidden, they lie, they do all these things to kind of keep you from it. So it's a big step, a leap of faith and trust to say, actually, it's the opposite. If you share all this stuff, not only is it going to help heal you, your relationship will help heal and restore if you share all the dirty secrets that you've had. So it's really difficult and scary to do. So, and it's different than most addicts actually kind of operate in the world up until this. But hopefully that's if they've seen, with other men's groups, let's say they've seen, okay, actually by sharing this stuff that I'm most shameful about and I'm accepted by these other guys, I actually find I can heal and restore my I actually feel better about myself. I think the same thing happens in the relationship, even though it's painful and devastating. That's usually what helps things move forward. So I just want to acknowledge that is a really big deal to ask anyone to do. But in terms of the prep time, it varies. It varies based on each couple, but I generally say 6 to 8 weeks. We can do this in 6 to 8 weeks. If someone's really dedicated, and that might, how can, some people say I could do this next week. I'm ready to go. But when I'm preparing a document, I'll just say some of the things that when I'm working with someone to actually write the disclosure document, we may go through 10 plus revisions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And editing is actually important because I'm going to be looking for subtle things and not so subtle things. Did you minimize anything? Did you rationalize? Did you justify? Did you, even things like I did such and such, but I only did it once. That stuff, those things, I'm always thinking, how's the partner going to be hearing this as it's read? So we're trying to get a document that says, here's the history without extras, without the justifications for it, or when you did such and such, I did this. That might all be true, but that's not the time for this. We're just trying to take, ownership of actions. So
it's cold. It's like the cold, hard facts, not the narrative, not how you feel about it. This is just what you did.
That's
undefended.
Yeah. Sorry, Hunter. Go
right ahead.
There's different views on it. There actually is a narrative disclosure format. That is a possibility. So if someone could do it, that is a possibility. The way I generally found it most helpful is starting with, narrative maybe later, but foundation of facts, because I've just found the more words go in there, the more the betrayed partner may start to feel like it's explaining things or trying to rationalize behaviors, or it just seems like there might be excuses thrown in potentially. So I think, and I've also found our field is we used to wait a long time before doing disclosures. I think the more I've found betrayed partners are searching this sooner, and I feel like we're doing them a lot sooner than we used to. So almost it takes someone a long time to actually get an understanding of their addiction and understanding what happened, and then really clarity on the impact of these behaviors on their partner and empathy. So if we're doing this early, the more words someone uses, the probably worse it gets. So I actually, to your point, I kind of keep it just the cold facts for now.
Yeah. And to kind of get back to like even the foundation, it's like, I get it, being in the shoes of somebody that has caused a lot of harm in my relationship with dishonesty and my acting out behaviors. It's like, you need that clean slate. And I know there is such a temptation to try to minimize because of how painful it feels. But like for anyone listening that is considering doing this, I just want to encourage you, because it is empowering to be able to come forward and know that like everything's on the table, and to come forward and have the courage to come forward with support, of course, but to be undefended and to let the truth just be the truth. Like that is what allows you the power to change it, right? And to change trajectory for yourself individually, but also for the relationship. I like to, with some of my guys, I use the analogy of like, the like Scooby-Doo cartoon where like the bad guy is so terrifying to them, and the whole episode they're running away and they're running around, and there's this monster that's trying to eat them or whatever. Well, then at the end of every episode, it's like they're taking the mask off the monster, and they're like, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was. It's just the librarian, or like whatever. I'm not trying to totally compare that to this, but the fact of the matter is, when that mask is off, when you can see clearly what you're up against, you can then know what to do about it moving forward, especially when you have the right support in your corner.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that phrase, we're only as sick as our secrets. And interestingly enough, I mean, we talk about how oftentimes it's the betrayed partner that pushes for disclosure. But when we've done, so Janice Caudle and I, we're the ones that when we wrote our books, we did some research. And interestingly enough, even though, yes, they're difficult to do, these disclosures, the benefit, it's actually the addict that reported more benefit from doing disclosure than the partner.
Okay.
I mean, they're both identified benefits and said this was helpful for me, but it was actually the addict, I think, for that point, saying, okay, now this is maybe the first time in my whole life that I have no secrets from the person that my spouse, from the person I care about the most. Is, and actually there's some freedom to that I don't have to hide anymore, which is so beneficial.
Isn't there a high percentage of people that report, like, I thought I read in a book about disclosure somewhere that like 90% or more are glad that they went through the disclosure process?
Yeah, I don't have the stats with me, but yes, I mean, overwhelmingly, yes, most do identify that it was worth it for them.
Do you have any kind of stats or numbers of how many people stay together after a disclosure? That might be harder to. to track. But
Schneider, I don't know if we did because there's some outcomes. Schneider and Corley did research on disclosure a while ago, and they found, and I don't know what percentage, I can't throw numbers out, but they said there was a decent percent of partners that said, oh, I can't stay in this relationship after disclosure. Some did say that. And that's the biggest fear the addict has. I share all this. There's no way they're going to stay. And yeah, some partners did threaten to leave. What actually turns out to be the case, I think overwhelmingly, even among those that said they were going to leave, most didn't. And that's because I think they kind of processed. And as the addict shows up more, and as they show up more and saying, because kind of to your point earlier, if I'm willing to share all this stuff, as painful as it is, it also says, wow, this person actually, my spouse actually was invested in my healing and my safety by sharing everything and not lying. Like there's actually a trust building part of it, even if it's difficult. So most people actually do stay. It's honestly not usually, in my experience, it hasn't been the disclosure itself that will kill a relationship, unless there are some, really deal breaker behaviors potentially for the partner around kids or around, depending on what their deal breakers are. Generally, it's not the disclosure that does it. It's the addict continued lies, continued deception, continued gaslighting stuff. It's that stuff that will ultimately kill a relationship, not the facts.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important to go back to what you were saying before. This is just laying that foundation. After this comes the rebuilding of a new life. And if we treat this like some kind of destination, like I checked a box, my wife should just, or my partner should just like be happy now and move on. And we just continue life like normal. Like you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Right.
Because it does take work to now create new patterns and restore intimacy and restore trust. The foundation's set, but the rest still needs to be built.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I just heard from a different colleague of ours about infidelity. And he was saying that 2/3 of people survive infidelity. Now, I know we're talking about addiction, which is different, but 2/3 of couples survive infidelity, and that's without therapy.
Wow.
So what he was saying is use this, if you have the crisis, which you are in the crisis anyways, use this crisis to transform you and to create something new. You might as well. And so getting the support that you need to be able to have the tools that you to use these tools like disclosure to really help move that crisis into something that can transform you individually and transform the couple.
So even though this is such a hard time, it's like, know that the odds are actually in your favor right now. Like anything could happen. Each coupleship is different, but the odds are in your favor. So take advantage of the time. Anything could happen.
And I hate to say it, but most of us don't actually take the opportunity when it was the best case scenario. I mean, most of us, it's not until we're kind of forced into it that we actually, right? Most people don't just, I want to better myself and do the right thing. It's usually when crisis happens or difficult times, and that's what kind of compels us to change and transform.
Right.
So, so I completely agree. I think that makes total sense, and use it. That's the core of post-traumatic growth. That nobody would wish this. I understand nobody wishes or would choose betrayal, but if you're in this, you can become so much more as an individual or as a couple through healing than ever before. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
So you hit this a little bit. Like one of the questions was just when should someone consider doing a disclosure? When's the right timing? You said, it really doesn't need to take as long as what a lot of people think, but are there a few key indicators that say, yes, someone's probably ready to either start this process or not?
That's such a good question. Yes and no. I think a lot of it is clarifying expectations. So in our workbooks, we talk about disclosures on the continuum. A disclosure done very early is going to have some components probably and not others. So for example, if a betrayed partner wants a lot of understanding of why these behaviors started and what an understanding of the impact on them, if it's early, they probably aren't going to get that. They'll get the facts, but they may not get an understanding level or kind of an empathy of, I can really see the devastation. So if the partner is really wanting that and just getting the facts isn't going to be enough, we'll probably have to wait longer to do the disclosure until that person really, really gets it more and gets in solid recovery. So that understanding expectations is really important. What each person's wanting from it. And this may go without saying, but if the betraying person, if the addict is not willing to share the whole truth, then let's not do disclosure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare that happens, but I have had people that tried to convince me to do disclosure, facilitate disclosure when they're willing to share, 99%, but this one thing would devastate my partner. So I can't share that one thing. And I'm not going to, if you're not willing to do that, I'm not going to be a part of essentially gaslighting the partner to say this is the full truth when it's really not.
Right.
So
it undermines the whole thing.
It undermines it because the partner will probably find that whatever that thing is, the secret out later, and it will completely erode whatever foundation of this foundation has big cracks in it, and the partner doesn't even know. So we can't do that. So if there's a couple exercises in our workbooks, which again may sound obvious, but am I ready and willing? Am I really willing to do it and really step in there? Which is scary, but if they're not willing to do it, I don't want to put the poor partner through something where it's not the whole truth.
Yeah. So it's not a one size fits all cookie cutter approach. It's like you start the process, you can start doing the exercises, you can work with a guide, and that guide can and the resources can help you determine, okay, what are the expectations? What do you actually want from this disclosure, especially for the betrayed partner, right? And then questions like, are you actually ready to tell the full truth? And if not, that's okay. Let's work towards that.
Right. But let's not do a disclosure and pretend that it's the whole truth and have the partner kind of rebuild safety and trust. And then we're starting to do that, because if that's the case, addicts sometimes think, I told one lie, but for the betrayed partner, that's not how they think. They're saying every day that you held that lie and you didn't tell me about it is a lie. So it's this it's a whole history. So let's say it's 10 years later that it takes 10 years for the partner to find that one withheld thing. They're going to think the whole 10 years has been a lie, not just that one thing you held back. So it's so critical. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, this is what I often hear too, is that the acting out is extremely painful, but the deceit and the lying is a whole nother level.
Always worse.
Right? I mean, they're both can be just horrible, but that's what I oftentimes hear from the betrayed partners. But what I'm wondering is there any other things like that wouldn't be appropriate for someone to do the disclosure for either partner? Like that you say, no, this isn't a time to move forward.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think sometimes on the betrayed partner side, if someone has medical condition potentially, or if they're pregnant, we get this sometimes if it's a betrayed partner's a woman and she's pregnant, I really want to seek medical advice, because this is going to be something. Is it going to be worse to hear this information for her, or is it going to be worse to sit on it? Like, those are things getting medical support. If there's active emotional abuse going on, sometimes it can put things more in danger.
You mean emotional abuse from
the addict?
From the addict. Okay.
I mean, I guess it could go both ways.
What about alcoholism? Like, what if one or both parties struggles with drugs or alcohol?
That's a good question. I guess I also want to know, I guess if it's alcoholism, it's probably been predating, but if it's sometimes, I know sometimes after discovery, sometimes partners will turn to alcohol as a way to cope and medicate. So it happens, or other things. So I guess I'd want to look at that. For sure, you want to know if there's other comorbid stuff and we have other addictions going on. We probably do need to take care of those and get clarity on it, because you can't. I don't know. I haven't found it too successful. I don't know about you guys, but someone who's actively in another addiction and trying to get sobriety over sex addiction, and they're still active in the other addiction, doesn't really work. It can't be an active compartmentalized addict. It doesn't usually work that well. So
because it's all connected, right?
It's connected.
Like if it's pornography, if it's acting out sexually, or if it's alcohol, or if it's XYZ, like, it's all the symptom of the same underlying issue, right? Of an inability to regulate emotions, cope with difficulty, cope with pain.
The negative core beliefs.
Beliefs. Right. Yeah, they're all intertwined.
And I don't see it. Some guys try to compartmentalize it, but if I'm actively alcoholic and I'm, let's say I'm sober sexually, to me, it's, I don't know. I don't know that I would, and they're defensive about it or not, in denial about it. Like, that probably isn't a good indicator. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. So
Sure.
it's probably more of a case by case basis.
I think so.
I'd say. Okay.
Because here's the other thing too, and this is another stat that kind of surprised me, to be honest with you. And the numbers won't be exact, but one thing in the survey that we did, of people that had gone through discovery and disclosure, on a scale of 0 to 10, level of distress, 0, no distress, to 10, the worst you can imagine. Betrayed partners ranked discovery, I think, like a 9.7 or 9.8. So that's really high. I think that's higher than the highest recorded earthquake that we've ever had. They recorded disclosure at about a 7.3, but the betrayed partner did. So it's big. It's really big. The thing that surprised me the most was we also asked what was the level of distress from the wait time between discovery and disclosure, and partners rated that right around a 9.2. So that level of waiting, when I'm free falling, I don't know what the facts are.
Yeah.
As another example, sometimes I use this. It'd be like going to a doctor and they're saying, I'm 99% positive you have cancer. You have cancer of some kind, but I'm not going to tell you anything about it yet. It's like this, so there's a big problem here, but you're in the dark as to how bad it is, what the severity is. It's like waiting to just, could you imagine just waiting? Like, yes, you have cancer, but we're not going to tell you how bad it is yet. Like that level of how upsetting that would be.
Right.
I think that's sometimes
like you
for the
could die
partner.
tomorrow or in 6 months or in 5 years.
Or maybe it's,
we're just going to leave it open-ended for you.
Right. And I think that's sometimes why when people will say, oh, the partner's not ready, she's volatile, or she's really emotionally distressed. Well, maybe that's because she's also free falling and she doesn't know which way's up. And so sometimes it's actually disclosure that actually does help settle her nervous system a bit too. So that's case by case too. But I've heard that a lot of times it's on the addict's guide side. Oh, she's not ready. She's not stable. Well, and maybe that's something to really look at, but maybe she's not stable because she doesn't know what she's healing from yet.
Yes. Yeah. So the waiting, the being in limbo is on average
worse than
2 points worse than the disclosure itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, the other thought that came to my mind when you were saying that is like with the doctor, the cancer doctor, what could even make it worse is you don't even trust. Like he's going to tell you something. He's going to tell you something about whether it's how sick you are, but you're not, or how sick it is, but you don't know if that's actually reality. So that's kind of lead into my next question, is that a lot of betrayed partners go, well, yeah, you're going to disclose, but is this the full truth? Even if you do go through with the therapist, you've lied for 20 years or, 10 years.
How do I know you're not lying to them?
You're not lying in the disclosure. So that's, so many people use like a polygraph. So what's your opinion on polygraph?
Yeah. And by the way, a lot of this stuff we've talked about, there's tons of different opinions on it. So I recognize that there's some controversy, especially when you get to polygraph. And to your point though, I've personally seen good benefits from the polygraph. And I will say I've seen them really help both people, actually, because sometimes I found it helps the addict do a more thorough investigation of their past potentially, or they just seem to be more detailed when the polygraph's on the table. I do want to differentiate fidelity versus forensic polygraphs. That's going to be really important. When we're talking about polygraphs for disclosure, it's not like, I don't know, I am thinking of any movie or CSI or something, where you're like, it's not an interrogation where they're trying to get you.
Yeah.
Isn't it true? And I knew you were lying. And it's not that. It's actually, the whole point is to verify and validate the truth of what you're sharing. So this process gives every opportunity to let you verify the truth, not try to catch you in something. That's not the point of it. So, but it's an instrument. It's in there, people talk about reliability and false positives, false negatives. That is definitely a possibility, but generally they're, I think, somewhere around 87 to 90 something percent accurate. It's not perfect.
Yeah, from my understanding, they're just asking like yes and no questions when they're going in there. It's not like they're, like you said, interrogating.
No.
Have you seen that polygraphs are used as part of a treatment plan? Like where they have like 6 months, a year going out, that they have an occasional polygraph to help both partners, that this foundation is going to stay strong and steady here, right? So I'm just curious about if you see
Yeah,
that.
sometimes it's oftentimes after someone finishes their first polygraph, they're like, okay, now I get it. And actually, I feel sometimes I've had some people come out of the poly and they're like, oh, I actually, I can believe myself. There's some part of it that they, like I've been sometimes lying to myself. They actually feel reassured. Okay, whew, like I can actually believe myself, and I have some foundation of integrity that I can build from, because now this thing verified that I was telling the truth.
So
but sometimes people do
reinforcing this belief that I'm just a lying sack of garbage.
Right.
Like they come out the other way, actually reinforcing the honesty,
right,
and a positive identity.
right. Yeah, I've generally found if someone's willing to be honest, generally they're going to pass the polygraph if they're sharing the honest, because the polygraph is testing not memory. It's not testing memory. And that's also another thing about disclosure. Disclosure is about honesty, not necessarily truth. And I think partners sometimes have a hard time with that, because I may not remember what I did 40 years ago. I might have to give, what I imagine I did, or give approximations. I may miss a couple details, but it's different to have forgotten something, or maybe miss, let's say I thought it was in 2003, but it's really 2004, this thing. It's different if I missed a detail incorrect, I got factual incorrect, versus I'm lying about it. The polygraph is going to test, did I intentionally hold something back? I knew it was 2003. I knew that was a big deal, but I didn't want to say it.
Right.
That's what the polygraph is going to test. Not because people are like, oh, what if I forget something? If you forgot something and you generally forgot, it's forgotten. It's not in your memory. It's the thing that you're holding that you don't want to share with your partner. That's what it's going to catch.
That's really important, because I think there is a lot of anxiety for the addicted partner, that I'm going to forget something and I'm screwed,
right?
Because it's going to get picked up on this thing.
No, it doesn't. It's not going to test.
It wasn't my intention.
It's not testing memory. It's testing, you're actively, you've had a disclosure document that you're putting out there as 100% valid, but it's not. That's what it's testing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not. And that's to your point, I think, Nicole, why we use them. And it's, even if they're not perfect, I've generally found really decent results, and I found them very helpful for people if they choose to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing again is that these tools can be really a platform to propel you into transforming. Like if like you were saying, the one guy that was like, I can trust myself again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that becoming that person of integrity that can be honest to the people in front of them and honest to themselves, that to me is a person that can start out with a foundation of moving towards integrity.
Right.
And that's a transformative process. Right. And so I think that, I know so many people are so scared to do that, but if they use these tools correctly with the right guidance, it can really help propel.
And can I just say on that too, that I think that's such a good point, because someone's willingness to do the polygraph also speaks a lot. Your unwillingness to do it or willingness to do it, even if I'm really scared, I know they're not, I'm willing to do it, because what my willingness to do it says to the partner is, I'm
huge.
Scared to do this. I may not fully understand it, or I feel how I feel about it, but partner, your safety is that important to me that I'm willing to do whatever it takes for you to rebuild trust in me, because my word, I've broken my word, and my word doesn't mean a lot to you. So, and sometimes if the addict is the one saying, let's just throw a number. I'm not exactly sure with it, but let's say 90%, they're 90%. There's a 10% chance that it could give a false positive or false negative. And they're going to say, so I'm not going to do it. What that signals is you're putting 100% of the responsibility on your partner to trust your word. And it's all falls on the partner so you're communicating your own protection is more important than safety of your partner when you do that. So I think that's so important for the addicts to understand that we're trying to rebuild safety and trust. And that's a huge way. Your willingness to do what you need to do to help rebuild safety and trust is so critical.
Yeah. My next question that I have is now that if someone goes through that process, disclosure, polygraph, what are the next steps to rebuilding trust? Because like you said, it's like, this is the beginning, right? This is the foundation. We still have a lot of building to do. So do you have any other tips or suggestions of what betrayer or can do to help rebuild trust, or even the betrayed partner? So
post disclosure,
yeah. To me, I think, and this is a concept that we put in the workbooks. Actually, it's based in it. I just wrote with a couple other colleagues a full book on just this concept of an intimacy pyramid. And to me, when I think of 5 levels, if I can go through that real quick, is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
On the pyramid, if I think of 5 levels, these concepts are not new, but the framework. If I think honesty is the foundation of this whole pyramid. After that, safety. On top of that comes trust. After that, vulnerability, and then at the pinnacle is intimacy. Those are the 5 levels. To me, disclosure, if we've done it right, we've got a new foundation of honesty and truth. Now, the next things I'm thinking about are safety and trust. How do we rebuild safety for the betrayed partner? How do we rebuild trust? So that's to me the next steps for the process. Usually, it's not uncommon that the partner will have a list of needs and boundaries post disclosure. So,
right.
And they may be some temporary ones. I think of we call like guardrail boundaries versus traffic cone boundaries. If I'm going in a mountain pass, I'm going to have a guardrail. Those aren't moving. Those are staying fixed. They're going to keep me safe. But having been in Los Angeles for a long time, like potholes everywhere, we need sometimes traffic cones, and we need to divert traffic because of a safety issue. To me, post disclosure, whatever traffic cones we need to put up, those are the boundaries that we might have. That might be more extreme or bigger than the partner might need for the future. Like, for example, I don't want you to touch me at all unless I initiate it. That won't be forever, but maybe for a couple months, that's what the partner needs because they need to protect their own space or their own body. So some of those things, I think rebuilding safety, the partner can come up with a list of needs that would help them feel safer moving forward. The benefit, and this is what I tell all the guys I work with, most guys feel controlled or punished by boundaries. That's their go-to feeling, or they feel like, oh, it's mom telling me what to do and I'm a bad boy kind of thing. If we can shift that to, that's not it at all. It's literally your partner saying, here's a roadmap towards rebuilding safety for me. And, again, understanding them, some of those, there's negotiation with that. Like some of them are maybe not doable, but if you really say, okay, I want to value these boundaries that you're sharing with me. If, that's the safety piece, but to rebuild trust, if my words and my actions line up, then I'm actually rebuilding trust, because that's what partners are going to be waiting to see. You said one thing, do you follow it up with action? Do your words, your actions line up? And if it's more consistent over time that your words line up with your actions, you're going to rebuild trust. So to me, that's one piece. There's another whole thing, which we probably don't have time for, but a lot of times partners will start, and you mentioned it earlier, Nicole, like do an impact letter. So they're starting to share their pain and their grief. That's common to do at some point when the partner feels ready post disclosure, to move into kind of sharing their own pain, because disclosure is really about the addict's story. And now the next phases are shifting into the partner's story, and then kind of the couple's grief story. That's like the bigger healing long term.
Yeah.
So there's kind of multi-stages there. Like first is just getting it all out on the table, with the right criteria and with the right expectations, all of that. Then when the partner's ready, they can make an impact statement, really communicating how this has impacted them so that, the betrayer can understand. And then it's an opportunity for the betrayer to come forward with empathy and love and compassion for the damage they've caused.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
I'm curious about couples counseling. So I know that we're probably going to get a lot of different answers from different therapists, but when do you suggest couples counseling? And every couple's probably different, but would couples counseling be appropriate in the acute stage, the crisis stage at the beginning, or after disclosure? I mean, is there kind of, what have you heard out there?
I guess it's such a good question. And you said there's so many different views on it. To me, I guess it depends on what we consider couples counseling. Because to me, you can have a dedicated couples person from day one, but that to me is different. What I'm doing then as a couples counselor that is really trying to help build safety and support for, like, triage. I'm building safety stabilization for the couple. I'm not doing kind of quote unquote traditional couples counseling where we're working on your communication issues and, the marital dysfunction or something, like the patterns that of which every couple has. It's like I've heard people use this analogy. It's like going to an ER. I'm going admitted to the ER with a gunshot wound and diabetes. What are they going to treat first? Not the diabetes. So when we're having this rupture, we're going to treat the rupture first and build safety stabilization around it. Yeah. Once we've done that work, then we can treat the diabetes. But we really have some people, a lot of times it's the addict wants to, but there's these other issues in the relationship that I want to address. Fair enough. I do want to address them. Right. But when we're dealing with a gunshot wound, which is what we're dealing with right now, like we have to address that first because this is the major rupture and we're not going to be able to get to the other stuff. So traditional couples therapy, in my opinion, is kind of like the diabetes work. It's all important. But I think the triage and things that we can do earlier would be more of like safety stabilization work. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question.
The first stage is just really that containing stage, helping them get through the crisis and setting up the stages for and disclosure is that part of that process, right? To help that containment, but to really help the betrayed partner and both of them. And that's really the first stage, right? Is the acute crisis stage. And really helping the hurt partner. And then I would say even the next stage is then the involved partner, the betrayer, is to really help them dive in and their recovery work to help understand the whys. And I think both partners need to understand the why. You can't just say, oh, I did the disclosure, now I'm all done. Be happy with me now. That's where that deeper work comes in, right? And to understand their addiction, to understand themselves. And then the third stage would be then the coupleship and rebuilding that there, if that's where they get to, right? So that's really the transformation of all three. And that's what I tend to tell couples is that there's three things that need healing here. It's you, him, and us. And so it's like a triangle. And so all three of those parts need to get some support and help. And so it really, I think, it depends on when that couple is ready to work on that third stage, I think.
Right. Well, and I think that, because we've worked with couples that have been in the midst of crisis, right? Or maybe the crisis happened while we're already working with them, right? Or, there's all kinds of variations of it. But I think a lot of couples are afraid to get couples support when the crisis is there because they're afraid that I'm just going to have to restore intimacy with this person when they've just betrayed me. It's like, no, not yet. Right. This is, like you said, that containment and making sure, we're helping them establish safety, boundaries, communicate effectively during this very, very difficult time so that they can move forward in their individual healing, prep for disclosure, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Which I think is why, I wasn't trained for this in school. I was trained as a marriage and family therapist. That was my training. I wasn't prepared for doing betrayal work. I was trained to do all the deeper, healing for couples. And I wasn't trained for it. So a lot of times traditional couples counselors or therapists aren't either. So knowing someone who gets this, who understands betrayal and can treat that. Yeah. Because I've had too many partners who feel now traumatized because they've been wounded already. And now their couples therapist is saying, okay, you're part of the problem. What's your part in this? So like when they're just healing from the rupture in the crisis time, like that's certainly not a time to look at any of that stuff.
I think what you were saying was really important, that you're saying something about couple, like that a betrayed partner can get really wounded and then it kind of started to cut off.
Oh,
are you saying if they go into traditional couples counseling, is that what we're saying there?
They're not trauma informed.
Exactly. Without trauma informed, traditional couples counselors look at a system. And if there's a problem in the system, that means two people have a part in that dysfunction or the problem. So they're looking at what each person's part is. So a lot of times the partner's saying, I didn't know about the addiction. I was betrayed. I was gaslit. I was deceived. And now you're saying I was a part of this. It doesn't make any sense. So every couple has issues to deal with, but I think, we have to address the rupture that was caused by the addictive behaviors and the deception first.
Yeah. And
so there's a time and a place for the different challenges. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the therapists that I follow that are some of the most wonderful relationship therapists, some of their criteria for doing the work is that if there is some significant mental health issues, or addictions,
active addiction,
or active affairs going on, that they will not even do couples work, because those things,
not ready.
Those things need to be addressed first,
Right.
before you can start to move towards intimacy and trust and all that. And so that's,
well, I know that's a big complaint for addicts, or those that have damaged that trust, is like, man, when will she trust me again? When will she get over it? And when can we move forward? Right. It's like, well, until these foundational things are done, like, maybe it's in her best interest to not trust you yet. Right. Because of the lack of safety and there's just the time, some of these things need to be done first. And
you haven't proven yourself.
It's painful because it takes time. But
I know, and I know that's not great to say, but I also often ask, how long was your partner in the dark from your behaviors? How many months, years, decades were you actively deceiving? And to me, that's pretty important, because we have to, not like it's just restitution 1-to-1, but I think we have to look at that. It takes time and patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a process. And I think what I hear about grief, it takes 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years to overcome grief. Right. And so this process is not a quick process. This is like grief. This is a loss. And so it's going to take time. And
that's not just holding my breath for 5 years. It's because I've seen this go on indefinitely. 2 to 5 years is when we're working at it. And that can feel like a lot. And I know that can be really discouraging, but it's not like 2 years, it's all horrible. And then magically in 5 years, we're better. It's like, we get better as we go. And
it's a
and
progression throughout.
It's a progression, right? I think we think of it like it's bad and then it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same thing, even with recovery, right? For the recovering partner from the behavior itself, it's like, it takes years to fully kind of rewire the brain and to make those changes while you're doing the work, right? But it's not that it's all bad all along the way.
Right.
It's not that you're going to feel super powerless, and it's not going to be brutal that whole time. It's just allowing that process of healing to fully take effect and staying consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally.
I say that there's stages of marriage, and that every marriage goes through some kind of crisis, some minor, some major, like a bit, betrayal or infidelity. And at that point, I think couples have usually 3 choices at that point. So one is divorce, which sometimes that's a necessary process. 2, some people put their head in the sand and don't do the work. And then 3, to do the work. So to commit to do the work. And sometimes some people are in different, choose differently. Some want to do the work, some want to divorce, some want to put their head in the sand. But if both people can commit to do the work, that's the process of where you can transform and you can change. And it's not a quick process. It's a long process. And it's the journey that you do together, that you realize, guess what? I'm a limited human being. You're a limited human being. And then if both people can commit to the process of recovery, of change, of changing their past, working on the addiction, their mental health issues. But it's the commitment. And so that's part of the process is that, is my partner who betrayed me, do I know that they're committed? Can I feel that they're committed? They may not be perfect, but are they committed to this process?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part of what betrayed partners want to see.
Huge.
And feel.
Right. That's huge.
When I think with this whole, this is a heavy topic for people, right? And the apprehension, the fear, all of this. But my hope is that today, for, the couple of people that are here live with us, but for those that are listening to this recording, that this can give you clarity, that it doesn't have to be such a, that you can just have more information from this discussion. Obviously there's more, but that can give you some hope, knowing, some confidence, knowing how to move forward, but also that we can shine that beacon of light of saying, hey, again, the odds are in your favor, and that the fulfillment and intimacy and love and all of these things that you've been longing for probably your whole life, or the whole time you've been in this relationship, or what you would like to have restored, that it's absolutely possible. And this is one of those ways that you can increase your chances of success tremendously, is by following a formal disclosure process like this. So it's really, as scary as it is, and however much you may dread this, if you feel like this is something that you should do, I understand those painful emotions and the fear, but also remember the hope.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that this is a process to help you to get what you actually want, not a process to lead you straight into a divorce or something like that. If somebody was to know the truth about you, the opposite is proven to actually be more true,
right?
Like in a huge way.
And I just want to add to that, as I just say that, you're worth the investment. Every dollar all the time, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've sent clients to Dan in the past as well that have done this formal disclosure process, and it's gone very well for them. And we've seen many, many couples that have gone through it as well. We've helped some couples through it, and what's waiting on the other side is beautiful. It's not easy.
Yeah,
it is not easy, but the opportunity here is tremendous. I guess we were going to open up for Q&A at the end here, but there's just really not enough time. But Dan, is there any kind of final thoughts or tips or anything that you would say for someone that's considering doing a disclosure?
Yeah, I so appreciate the heart of what you just said. I think was so valuable, because I know this can feel overwhelming or discouraging or scary, but it's so beautiful, because I think it's those couples that work, that the relationships forged through the fire, they become stronger through this whole thing. I've just seen it, and it's so beautiful to see. Some of my favorite couples ever are those that have really worked through the tough stuff, and they've come out so beautiful. So I agree. There's something as difficult as it is. Just a couple things right now, and I realize one reason we wrote these workbooks directly to people that were trying to heal from betrayal and work through this. I really recommend getting a guide to help through this. It's really strongly recommend not doing it on your own, because usually you need some support with this. I understand that can also get expensive. So we are working on some other options where we can do some group work or some other possibilities, so that it's not so labor intensive, so expensive. So just know we're working on that, because I understand having two guides working one separately with each of you can get expensive. So we're trying to find different options that would help cut down costs and help streamline it, like putting some videos up and just having people be able to walk through the process a little bit more guided. So anyway, I just want to encourage people, get the support, because it's so invaluable to have that from someone who knows what they're doing. At our Janice Cottle and I's website, Kintsugi Recovery Partners, we have a list of disclosure guides, some therapists, some coaches, so people that can help support too. So we have a lot of people we're invested in trying to do this well for people and build excellence. So we have people that have gone through our trainings to so that they take this seriously. They have that level of training experience.
Yes. Yeah. And I will, below this video, in the description of the video, I am going to put links for Dan's websites and the links to all the resources. Like, for example, they've written there's full disclosure workbooks. So for the betraying partner, it's a complete guide. And for the partner that suffered the betrayal, there's multiple volumes to help guide you through how to heal and how to prepare for the disclosure on your terms. And how to heal afterwards. It's all there for you. They've really done a ton of work. And so I'll link all of that in the description. And also, like he said, they have a tab that says find a guide, so you can find a clinician or a coach. And if you have any questions about any of this, obviously you can reach out to us directly, and we can point you in the right direction as well. But the links will all be underneath this video.
And you have a more recent book that you mentioned earlier. It was Building True Intimacy book. And is that on there as well?
That would be on my website. So that was written with 2 other colleagues, but it was based on the intimacy pyramid. We wrote a guide basically for how couples can build intimacy back in their relationship.
And that's at what website, or where can they get that?
It's on Amazon, but on my BanyanTherapy.com website, I think we have a link to it too.
Okay, great.
Yep. I'll share a link. So yeah, BanyanTherapyGroup.com. I'll put a link to the resources. The first one, it says Building True Intimacy, and the book, you buy it on Amazon, but then there's multiple downloadable resources that you can get for free right there on the website. Yeah,
we're trying to put more and more out for free too, so people have access to that. So we'll keep updating that, giving more free resources.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, sweet. Dan, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Like, it's just really refreshing talking to you. And I think, again, just it's an exciting thing. I mean, I know that as painful as all of this is, like, healing is possible. Everyone, like, again, that's watching this, like, your future is worth it. And there is a way through this mess.
Yeah. You've seen it. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan, for your time. It's so great connecting with you.
Thank you guys for what you do. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.